So, good morning, everybody. My name's Darren. For those of you that don't know, I'm one of the leaders at New Life Community Church Milnrow. A warm welcome to you. If you just watching this, you're not part of our church or know anybody individually, it's warm welcome to you. Warm welcome to a church family, friends, and relatives. It's just hope you're gonna have a good day today. I've just got a few encouraging words, I hope, to bring to you this morning. My prayer would be that I'd try and communicate this well and it would come across, and the words that I say would be, what would you say, kind of understandable. I'm sure there's a better word than that, but I can't think of it. People say, be yourself on camera. Be yourself. How can you? How can you be yourself when you're just talking to a phone and there's nobody there and you just got to talk? I guess you get better and better at being yourself. I guess, if you want to be, I suppose. Might even learn some skills, I don't know. Anyway, I digress. I hope you have a great morning. I hope you enjoy this message. I hope that you carry this message forward and outward, and that God would meet you and change you, and He does transform us. God is in the business of transformation, and He's in the business of transformation by the renewing of our minds, and it is what we think about. It's what we believe, the actions then we take is what makes the difference in our lives, and it's exciting. And it's an exciting journey of discovery of who God is, who Jesus is, what He's done for us, who we are, and how He's made that to be. It's a very exciting journey. If you have any questions, please just message and get in contact with New Life Community Church Milnrow and just have a chat. It'd be great. So, where do I start? I've had one of those weeks where you feel like, well, I'll tell you, a few years ago, quite a few years ago, I went to a church conference and I went with 3 other people. I can name them for you if you want. I could name John Nuttall, Ian Lowe, I can name John Oldham was there, and I was there. And it was a crazy, fantastic Holy Spirit time. Miracles were happening, Holy Spirit was moving, and all kinds of things were happening. Well, one of the things that really stood out to me is that, for those that don't know, church can be crazy sometimes. It's not all what you might imagine if you imagine everybody sat there all prim and proper. And that's not the church that I'm aware of, that we go to. I don't mean we're total crazies, sometimes, but it's not all what you might imagine. Anyway, this was particularly on the chart crazy, but there's one thing that stood out to me, and it's impacted me for years now as I've thought about it. But there's this lady, I don't know how old she was, but she was, in her 50s, I would say, and she was dancing around. And she was dancing around carrying a child's hammer, like a rubber hammer, like this one. It wasn't this one. And she was dancing around praising God. And then she'd go to a group of people or a person and she'd just go bonk on the head. And then she'd dance off. So she'd come bonk you on the head with this and run off. Crazy. And on another level crazy. Never seen it anywhere else. Now, it didn't just bonk. It squeaked as it bonked. So it just made you laugh, that was the amazing thing. And I've had one of those weeks. I've had one of those weeks where I felt God just go bump on my head and go, it's that simple. It's that easy. It's that fun. It's a good place that you're in, Darren. And it's a good place that I've got you. And, and all those things. And I feel like it's just been a bit of let me do it again. Bump on the head. But it squeaks like a stupid child, and He wants us to be more childlike. He wants us to have fun. This abundant life is full of love, full of joy, full of peace, and that is the life that God has for us. Now we're in a difficult situation and things, but even in those places we find the joy, we find His peace, we find His joy, and we can enjoy things. So anyway, I've been reading through Mark's Gospel, and I'm going to read from Mark chapter 8, and I just hope this is an encouragement for you this morning. I'm particularly going to highlight verses 15 to 16, so just one verse. I asked God a question about this verse, and I feel like I had an answer, and it was one of those squeaky head bouncing moments. Anyway, So just to give a bit of context, Jesus has fed 4,000 people with a few loaves of bread, okay? And that's a miracle. So a miracle's happened. The disciples have seen Jesus, and everybody's seen Jesus feed. I'm sure not everybody knew, by the way, that it was a miracle, but they'd been fed. But Jesus and the disciples knew that it was a miracle because they only had a few loaves of bread, and they fed 4,000 people. Pretty good. Then as Jesus is coming away, he has an argument with the Pharisees, who are the church leaders of that time, who demand a miraculous sign. And I get the impression they exasperate Jesus, because they ask for a miraculous sign, and then Jesus is like peeved off with them and says, why do these people demand a miraculous sign? I tell you the truth, I will not give this generation any such sign. And he's miffed off, and he's walking away with the disciples, and so he gets back into the boat. He leaves the Pharisees and the 4,000, and he gets in the boat with the disciples to cross to the other side of the lake. And that's where I pick up verse 14. And the title is Yeast of the Pharisees and Herod. But the disciples had forgotten to bring any food. They had only one loaf of bread with them in the boat. As they were crossing the lake, Jesus warned them, watch out, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod. At this they began to argue with each other because they hadn't brought any bread. Jesus knew that what they were saying, so he said, why are you arguing about having no bread? Don't you know or understand even yet? Are your hearts too hard to take it in? You have eyes that can't you see? You have ears, can't you hear? Don't you remember anything at all? When I fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread, how many baskets of leftovers did you pick up afterward? 12, they said. And when I fed the 4,000 with 7 loaves, how many large baskets of leftovers did you pick up? 7, they said. Don't you understand? He asked them. And I had a bit of a chuckle with myself about this passage when I read it, because I realised we do that, or I do that anyway. We see a great big miracle that Jesus has done. Yeah? Jesus is then dealing with something else in our lives, maybe, or in, whatever he wants to deal with. And then Jesus says something to us, and we don't hear what he's saying because we're too busy thinking about ourselves or thinking about something else, or we pick up on a word that is said and we think it means something when it doesn't mean that, and then we end up maybe arguing with ourselves or arguing with each other depending on what it is. And I thought, wow, I had a bit of a chuckle to myself. So here's the disciples that kind of, they've seen this great big miracle. I don't know whether they've particularly seen this argument. They probably have. And they'd forgotten to bring bread. But because Jesus says, watch out, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod, they then instantly used the word yeast and related bread and thought Jesus is talking about bread. We haven't brought it. Let's argue about it. I believe that happens in church, doesn't it? I think God says you are loved, and then we go, well, loved means this, and then they argue about it, And I thought, wow, that's pretty rubbish, but also cool to see that Jesus is dealing with that, and he knows that that's what happens to us. So this morning, as I chat away and as I share what I feel God said to me, let's try not to pick up on words and then go off in our minds off track and go, well, that's what that means. Let's try and not start again, but let's try and just listen really well so that we maybe let go of our old mindsets to get something new. Maybe I'm not saying that I've got anything brand new or anything like that, but I'm just saying the only way we can learn and listen well is by letting go of some mindsets and not going down a rabbit trail, because already I've read this scripture, and there might be some people who are brilliant teachers, and they're all going to know this is what this means, so therefore anything I say is irrelevant. And they might have already decided that, and that might be true. I'm not saying it isn't, but it might be true. There might be somebody listening that has never heard it before in the whole world, but they hear something, they hear the word Jesus, and they think that means something, and so therefore they switch off. Don't do that this morning. Let's just listen this morning, and let's just see and converse. I'm really passionate about asking questions. Questions are the most important thing in life. We either make statements or questions. There's not much else that goes on in between statements and questions. Questions are invaluable. And this is how I felt the Lord speak to me this morning when I said, What does it mean when you say, watch out, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod? And I asked the Lord a question. I said, what is the yeast of the Pharisees and what is the yeast of Herod? That's the question I asked. And I feel like I've got an answer, and I feel like I want to share it with you, and hopefully it'll bless you and hopefully it'll help you. So, there we go. Straight, good link, I think they call that. We'll go straight into... So, it was when I saw Jesus say to the disciples, after his bit of an issue with the Pharisees who had asked for a miraculous sign, he's saying to his disciples, his followers, he's speaking to them, and he's saying, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod. Because yeast, we know what yeast is. It's what goes in bread that helps it to rise, but it permeates the whole piece of bread. It goes into every area of it. And so he's saying to his followers, beware of these yeasts that are that can come up in your life. Beware of them and watch out. And I thought, well, this is serious. So I want to know what that is so that I can watch out for it. Simple. And I didn't get an answer for a few days, by the way. So I just had to ask that question, just put it out there, and Lord, please, And I was just sat with him, and I was just meditating, I guess, on some stuff, and I was reminded. Strangely, this might not seem like a connection, but it will be in a little while. But I was thinking about how I love racket sports. That's, in my life, I've always loved mainly table tennis, but I love badminton. Tennis, not too good at, but I could play it really quite well. Anything to do with racket sports, I could play well, apart from golf. Golf, that's not a racket sport. That's some kind of. I think I agree with Mark Twain when he says it's a good walk ruined. That's my opinion of golf. If you love golf, fantastic. God bless you. I love the idea of golf. I love the nice walk. I love the idea of the clubhouse, hole 19, whatever you want to say about that. Friendships and just the atmosphere and the way it all looks. I love that idea, and I love sports, so anything that's competitive like that, I'd like. But the difference, so table tennis, I grew up playing table tennis from being about 4. By the time I was about 12, 13, I was kind of like being taken to a school of excellence to get better and better and maybe go even better at it. So I was quite good at it. That's not bragging, it's just reality. Not as good as I'd like to have been, not as good as some people that were around me, but I was good. So I've always classed myself having good hand-eye coordination, and I have got that. And in table tennis, like most racket sports, but table tennis I can probably explain a bit better. It's timing. I mean, if you watch a game, it's so fast, but when you're in it and you get better because you've been practicing, your whole body becomes a timing machine. And it's the same. You watch sport. Anybody that does it really well, they just look like it's effortless because they've got timing of it all completely down. And so when you're playing table tennis and you're doing a shot, you're getting everything in the right position, the right place and the right timing to hit that ball in the right place on your bat. And when you hit that place in the right bat, they call that, as you know, the sweet spot. And before you've even, I would argue that that before you even hit it, that you're hitting the sweet spot. And as you've hit that sweet spot, that's on. You know where you've put it. You got that shot how you wanted it. And it is the sweet spot in so many ways, but it's literally a spot, on the racket, on the table tennis bat, where you hit it for what you want to do. So to give you the spin that you wanted, to put it where you wanted it, there's a sweet spot, and it makes a different sound, but it has a different feel. It has all kinds of different things about it, but because you feel that sweet spot. And it's like I played cricket, not very good at that, but I played cricket, and on a cricket bat, if the ball hit the sweet spot of the bat, it went further. You knew because there was no effort in it, there was no pain in hitting it. It just bounced and went further than you thought, and almost like you didn't hit it. And as you get better timing, you just know it's a good shot because you know it's hit where you want it to hit. And most sports are like that. There's a sweet spot on that racket or the bat that you hit. Golf. The reason why I don't like golf so much is because my experience of golf is that you really know when you don't hit the sweet spot. So you try and swing, you hit it, you don't hit it right. It takes shocks all the way from the club, all the way up your arms, shoulders, back, and it's painful. And I couldn't stand with that. But that's not why I gave up. I thought I'm still going to do it, even though I'm feeling pain nearly every shot, pain every shot. The reason why I gave golf up was because when I hit it, at the sweet spot, I had no idea I'd done it. And I thought, I can't do this game, and just put my clubs down and then walked away. I'd never played again. And I think for me, that was a wise decision. I remember one particular time, there's a par 3 at the tee. I've done all the bad shot, all the bad nothing, and I come to do it. I thought, try my best again, expecting this pain to go up my shoulders. Swung, and I'm looking round for the ball because I didn't feel a thing. And I'm looking around for the ball, and then I looked, and it was near the pin. And I thought, that's when I gave it up, because I thought, I can't learn how to feel nothing. So I'm not doing it. And that's been true. But I know people who are good at golf, they love golf, brilliant, go for it. Go for it big time. Enjoy it. Because it is fantastic. It looks great, being outside, being with your friends. Oh, I love it. Anyway, I digress. Sweet spot. There's a sweet spot. And so as I'm asking the Lord about this yeast of the Pharisees and the yeast of Herod, he starts talking, I feel like he's talking to me about table tennis and the sweet spot. And I'm thinking, right, okay, no idea why. Just no idea. And anyway, so I thought, right, what is a Pharisee? Who is Herod? What thing? And as I started to look at this and think of this, and I wrote some things down, similarities between them, but I do believe from two different places though. So, and I'm giving the simplistic version, my version. I'm sure there's more to this. You know what I mean? So everything's discovery. But the bit that, so as I'm thinking of the Pharisees were religious leaders of the day, and they still are. I'm not too into details of that, but the religious leaders of the day, they kept God's law, the same God who is Jesus, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the same God. They were given laws, and they put them laws upon themselves, and they put them laws on the other selves. The only issue was they created hundreds of others of laws that God never gave them, and he put them on people. And some of them were beneficial, some of them weren't, etc., etc. And there was all kinds of different things. But they believed they were righteous. They believed that God loved them and was pleased with them and would relate to them, and they were in God's camp because they did this law, that law, the other law, this law, that law. And because they kept them perfectly, and they did, they were the righteous ones. They were the chosen ones. They were the ones that, and I'm being very simplistic about that. So there's more intricacies in that are more fabulous and interesting to know, I guess. That's what they believed, and that's what they acted out, and that's what they did. This is before Jesus died on the cross, and it still can kind of happen today, where there's Christian theologies that believe you must do this to get right with God. You must do this to so that God's pleased with you. And anyway, Herod, on the other hand, another leader, but a leader of in the way of the government of the time, a powerful leader in charge of people, in charge of everything, and ruled over an area, over a part of a nation or a nations or whatever, I'm not quite sure, but he is a powerful leader, and Pharisees were powerful leaders of the people who were religious. Herod was a powerful leader of the whole people, of everybody, and you've got these two people, and we're talking about beware of the yeast of these two people. So as we know, yeast permeates the whole bread, so Jesus is saying, okay, how is this, beware this yeast doesn't permeate you. And let's personalise this, how has the yeast permeated me? And that's been my journey as I've been listening and thinking about this more and more. And I can see in all different areas of life, the yeast of the Pharisee affected me, the yeast of Herod affected me, and this is why I asked the question, I guess. So both of them have some things in common, though, that I think are really important, even though they come from completely different places in a way as well. And I've written them down, so I'll just share them from this. So both yeasts permeate the whole dough, okay? Both yeasts we're supposed to be aware of and not have them in our lives. So let's put that right down, yeah? There. Because it's the influence that they have that's the issue. Okay. So both yeasts are full of pride. Both yeasts are self-reliant. Both yeasts are self-righteous. Both yeasts, the Pharisees and Herod, are self-righteous. They're self-important. they don't need Jesus or God because they've already got it sorted. They already know how to sort it. They already know why they've got it sorted and how this has happened. So they don't really need God. They just, this is it. This is what it is. And they almost as well, which is a kind of a strange thing. They're both kind of helping God out. I'm all powerful Herod, helping God out, rule this world, even if he doesn't believe in God. The God could be himself. I'm helping people out. I'm helping God out. I am God, so I'm helping people out. And the Pharisees, who are like, well, I'm helping God out with all these people, so I put more laws on these people to make them more right, and then therefore I'm helping God out. And none of them really know the gospel or know God themselves. Anyway, I digress. You see the difference. Or the similarities as well. So the thing with Herod, he's the person who just says, I'm worth it. He's the L'Oreal ad, because I'm worth it. This has happened to me. I am in this position because I was born to be in this position. All the decisions I have made is why I'm in this position. I have this power, and I want more power, by the way. I want more success. I want to rule more people. And I have this power and authority because I've done it, because I've achieved it. I was obviously I'm picked for this, personally picked for this, because I was obviously made like this. This is how I was made to do this. And I have done it. I have made the correct decisions. I have put myself into this position. I have got myself here, and it's all me the reason why I'm so successful. And that to me is the yeast of Herod in this example. The yeast of the Pharisee is like, God is pleased with me. I'm doing his job because this is what he showed us, and this is what we're sticking to, and this is what we're going to do. And if we do this perfectly, then I'm holy. So if I do this perfectly, I am holy. If I do this, God is pleased with me. If I do this, so it's all about self-doing things, self-righteousness, whereby you go, yeah, it's me that's made me holy, not God. So me following these rules is what made me holy, not God. And on the other hand, Herod, who goes, well, I'm just fantastic. I'm holy because I've made myself holy. Same things, but it's this power, authority that's just, I am valuable and I am worth it because of me, to this, I follow this guidelines that have been given to God, but I still do it. It's me that makes myself holy. So you've got these two things. And the Bible's really clear that if we have pride, both of them are pride because they're putting everything into their own hands. Their life with God is in their own hands. Their righteousness from God, their holiness is not from God, it's from themselves. So those two things are pride, and we know what happens with pride. God opposes the pride and opposes pride, and Jesus is saying here, beware this yeast, because it permeates our whole lives, and he wants it out so that we have a sweeter life, so that we have a better life, a good life, an abundant life with him. And we know who our source is. So as I'm weighing this up, I'm thinking, well, okay, that's simple for me. I can kind of get that. I can understand the two differences. But the immediate question that comes to my mind then is, how do I navigate that? How do I navigate those two yeasts? How do I not be, the Pharisee over here? Or how do I see the yeast of the Pharisee? How do I see the yeast of Herod? And how do I navigate this? This is going to be a nightmare. And then I said, how do I hit that? But both the Pharisee and the Herod were trying to hit a bullseye. They're trying to hit a mark, aren't they? They're hitting a mark. Right? Herod thinks he's hitting a mark. The Pharisees are trying to hit a mark. They're trying to be perfect in their own strength and in their own ways. And I thought, how can we do that? How can I navigate both these things? And I felt the Lord say, you don't have to. So, what? You don't navigate this. So, okay, all right, what do you mean? Well, I have hit the whole world with my sweet spot. I am the sweet spot. And I'm thinking, what? So, as I thought about this, I thought, yeah, I don't have to hit any mark. I don't have to get it right about Herod and Pharisees and get my whole life into order myself and work on myself and help God out working on myself and help God working out on other people. Jesus has already hit me perfectly in with the sweet spot of himself. He's the one when he lived this perfect life, sinless life on earth, when he went from God to becoming human and lived a life of sinlessness. He covered all the stuff of the Pharisees' law stuff in that life. He then died, that everybody mystically died with him. Then on the third day, rose up again with him. The same mystically, he rose up, and therefore we rose up. And in that cross, in the finished work of the cross of Jesus' life, the incarnation, his life on earth, and his life, death, burial, resurrection, that was where the whole world was hit in his sweet spot. He is the sweet spot for the whole world that sweeps it up into this grace of his love and of his power and of who he is and who we are. And in that sweet spot of his obedient life, fulfilling all the law of the Pharisees, negating all the stuff of our own human power, he negated all those things that keep us all away from himself. And in that sweet spot, we were all taken up into that sweet spot, and we live in that. He's hit us with the sweet spot. That's all I'll say. That's the best way. It's like he took his cricket bat with the whole world, and he hit the whole world, and he hit it perfectly, the whole world into the sweet spot of himself. And it's like, well, okay, that needs some thinking about. So, and I'm sure there's more to be, think about in that as well. Okay, but right, so you're the sweet spot. So I don't have to hit the sweet spot because Jesus has hit the sweet spot. Do you understand what I mean? I don't have to live a life that's trying all the time to hit perfect sweet shots all the time, which is, I think, a Pharisee, the yeast of the Pharisee. Yeah? So that negates that. So what Jesus is saying is don't let that yeast where you think you have to work on yourself, that you have to be this perfect person, that you have to pray loads, you have to fast loads, you have to do this to be in Christ or him in you. He's already hit you with the sweet spot. And the other side to it is, if you can think about this and believe this, not believe it, but it's just true, is you are his sweet spot too. So on the other side is, Jesus did all this because you were his idea and I was his idea. And his salvation of the cross and the gospel, the good news of the cross and the resurrection, and himself coming from heaven to earth to because he loved us and to fulfill this life and to hit the whole world in this sweet spot. He did that because he loves you and you're his sweet spot and always have been before the earth was even created. But we mess up by thinking we can do it, we make ourselves right with God, or that we can do it all on our own in human power. We make those two mistakes, and those two yeasts keep us from the reality, the truth of Jesus himself, and keep our eyes kind of foggy and our ears a bit deaf and our minds foggy to know who Jesus is. So that's why he says, beware the yeast of the Pharisees and Herod. Self-human power, but believing they're doing God's will. And both of them are not true. The reality is that Jesus has already got you, and you wake. And so the gospel message is, wake up to the truth that Jesus Christ is God, and he loves you, and he's got you right where he wants you to be right now, in that perfect place. So he said, but don't you have to believe? Don't you? Yes, you do. Don't you have to repent? Yes, you do. Don't you have to do this, and yes, you do. But it's not from that place of thinking you have to do that or the reason you've got something. The reason you've got something because you believed, or the reason you've got something because of your faith you got it. Hear me out, hear me out, hear me out. It's the fact that it was already true. You heard the message, believed, because you heard the message, and you turned away, repented from your old life, came into a new revelation of the new life, and you get to walk and begin the journey of discovering yourself, discovering Jesus, discovering God, and how this whole thing works. And sometimes we can forget or get off track because we believe somehow we did it, that we believed, so therefore it happened. I can't believe that's true. I just can't anymore. To me, the gospel is it's already happened. Jesus has finished that work, and we just get to enjoy the work and walk with Christ, an obedient life to him. And that's the abundant life, not without difficulties, not without, in fact, with difficulties, with persecution, with troubles and all that comes with life. But now, looking into the eyes of Jesus, walking with him hand in hand, and having somebody who is in charge of the whole thing, has wisdom beyond even, don't even go there, knowledge beyond, don't even go there, huge. You get to do that life and all its good things and all its troubles with a God who loves you, a God who cares about you, a God who knows all things, and is just loves you to life. So maybe you're a person this morning who is thinking to themselves, well, I've failed, I'm rubbish, I'm pathetic, I can't do anything, God has got nothing, he's not interested in me, I've tried it, I've done it, I've da-da-da. I want to tell you, all those negative things about yourself are not true. Maybe you just believe, maybe you've just allowed the yeast of the Pharisee to permeate you, and you've believed certain things, that you have to do this, this and this, that you're not worthy, that you're not valuable to God. Well, the good news is you are totally valuable to God, that he loves you, and when you just lift your head up, in fact, I'd argue with you that he's already lifting your chin up, and he's saying, come on, stand with me, I've got you, I've got this problem you have, I've got this, I still love you, you are still my child, you are still the person I made you to be, nothing's changed, your value is immensely valuable, so much so Jesus decided to die for you, and he knew this moment, and he's been with you all this moment. You just turn to him, just speak to him, just open your mind and your heart to his presence and peace, to his life, not trying to do it in your own strength. Maybe you're a person that, doesn't, God is a crutch. God is nothing other than for people that have mental issues, for people that, don't need that kind of crux. And I'm going to be honest with you, I believe that idea is the yeast of Herod, whereby the idea that God doesn't exist, that he can't exist because of X, Y, and Z, that's the yeast of Herod. And that then becomes like, well, I don't need God, so therefore I will sort myself out, I will make decisions on my own life, and I'm the one that's made myself successful, or not, as the case may be. I'm the one that's, so got everything sorted, I know how this all works. I argue with you, that's the yeast of Herod. And this morning I just ask you just to sort of like maybe say, what if it is? What if it is what Jesus is saying here, the yeast of Herod, where it's just a human power, where it's just my power that's got me here? And maybe, what if there is a God that actually, Israel, this is God's idea, this is God's world, albeit not how he intended it, but how he's going to make it. And just for a moment maybe, what if this Jesus is God that's been around, that people have been telling this message for over 2,000 years, and some people it's changing and transforming their lives? What if that's true? And I just ask you to think about that no matter what you've got, whether you're driving 15 cars, whether you've got 15 mansions, 12, whatever, and you are, I bless that. Don't misunderstand me here. But I bless that, because I believe God's given you a gift of making money, a gift of doing all those things, a gift in business. The reality is that source is from the Lord. And I just say to you though, and that's human power, but it's not everything you need. And this walk with God, this walk with the Lord, this way of that He's got you in a sweet spot, it's already true. It's already the reality. But the yeast of Herod, that human power pride, has fogged your ears, your eyes and your mind to believe in certain things. So I pray for you that that fog will be lifted for everybody. I hope this has been an encouragement. I look forward to hearing about how this journey of, you know, because see, this is another thing. I thought I was going to end there, but I'm not. It's probably too long already, I have no idea. But this yeast of the Pharisees and yeast of Herod, I believe, permeates all of us to some degree or another. We need to be wary of it. For ourselves, first of all. But obviously then it causes pain to other people. And no matter what, you know, you can be somebody who's in the grace camp. And I think grace is more than 3 graces. But you can still have the yeast of the Pharisee in that place. And you can have still the yeast of Herod in that place. So be careful, watch. An example would be making points when you're preaching. That you have somebody who's, you believe, has got the yeast of the Pharisee. You know, that you kind of, you know, well, they must believe this. You know, I'm putting my hands up here. You know, that's what it sometimes, you know, you can be in that grace place, you can know what Christ has done and won for you, but you can still be thinking, well, they don't. Well, actually, you don't know they don't, and you don't know they do. And that comes back to the letting go of all, you know, the judgment of that. Because I think judgment is based in the yeast of the Pharisee, the yeast of Herod, or, you know, mixture. And I just bless you. Have a great week. But if you've got questions, bob me a question. Email me, message me on Facebook, whatever. But, you know, ask anything on here. Get in contact with New Life Church if you're interested. Have a great week. And enjoy discovering who Jesus is and who He's made you to be. Bye now.